Hello, good afternoon all, and thanks for joining us for this webinar for the application cycle of Cohort 4 of the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI. I'm Alex Steng, and I'm the program lead for this fellowship, joined by Beatrix Fletcher, the program manager for this fellowship. We'll be talking to you today about what the fellowship involves, how to apply, and we'll take your questions at the end if you have any. I hope you can see my screen. Without further ado, I'm going to go into the presentation. We are the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI, an educational fellowship, part of the NHS Digital Academy that's now in its 4th year of recruitment. Our mission is to equip healthcare leaders to adopt clinical artificial intelligence. And our very slimline and agile team is 3 people: Haris Shoaib, our director, Beatrix Fletcher, our program manager, and myself, program lead. We all have clinical backgrounds and work in the NHS. To tell you a little bit more background on why we set up this fellowship, it was in response to a couple of documents, the most important of which was the Topol review, which highlighted the need for the workforce transformation to happen in order to facilitate the digital transformation that is sorely needed in the NHS. And part of that is creating dedicated posts so that workforce can pick up the specialist digital and AI skills that are required for that transformation. This was again highlighted in a later report, the NHS England long-term workforce plan from last year, in which we're referenced as one of the flagship upskilling programs for the digital workforce. That person, healthcare leader, labeled in purple inside the healthcare system, is the person we're trying to make more of. And that's a huge bottleneck for AI transformation in the NHS. The healthcare leader is at the center of this process, liaising between the AI solutions model developers, the regulatory environment around it, making sure that it's integrated safely in the context of NHS IT, information governance, management, procurement, etc., and making sure, most importantly, that it meets the needs of patients by being safely and effectively deployed in clinical workflows. So our solution to this in the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI is to embed fellows in existing centres of excellence where there are clinical AI teams in the NHS to deploy and evaluate real-life AI software in actual clinical workflows. This is the centerpiece of what the fellowship is, and that happens for 2 days a week. So for 12 months at 2 days a week, you will have your time bought out to embed, deploy, evaluate AI software in an NHS team that's already doing that. And that's under the supervision of a multidisciplinary team with national and often international experts in the area. Here's the growth of our cohort to date. In cohort 1, we started off with just 10 fellows, as you can see in here. And in our most recent cohort that's been recruited to and is in post now, we are up to almost 30 fellows. And there'll be more than 30 in the next cohort, spanning now almost every region across Great Britain. And we'll talk about the specific eligibility of different workforce groups later on in this presentation. This is how we deliver that person, the healthcare leader who is an AI-enabled clinician. We base a curriculum around the AI lifecycle. And the most important, as I've already mentioned, aspect of this curriculum is delivered through an immersive AI project under expert supervision, deploying and evaluating AI tools in real clinical environments. That covers an important part of the life cycle that cannot be replicated anywhere else. These are skills that you're not going to learn in a textbook, that you're not going to learn from studious library work. This is real life coalface work in AI and all the messiness that comes with data wrangling and extraction, dealing with information governance, medical device regulation, etc. We complement this with a bespoke teaching regimen of masterclass workshops. These are co-developed with national and international experts in NHS, academia, and industry, to complement your real-world practical deployment of AI tools with highly interactive workshops. A huge block of these happens right at the beginning of the fellowship in August, where there will be a multi-day residential boot camp in London with intensive, we call it drinking from the fire hose of knowledge on AI to really get you up to speed at the very beginning of the fellowship. Later workshops in the year happen in a traveling roadshow methodology where we take you to different centers of excellence. For instance, this year our fellows are visiting Birmingham, Oxford and Leeds to see how local practice differs in AI deployment and evaluation, and to really plug you into those networks up and down the country to facilitate your future work as a leader in clinical AI. There are some asynchronous and distance learning aspects to our course as well, one of which is modular e-learning on the King's College London Innovation Scholars Programme on big data and AI, and another one of which is a self-directed e-learning on programming and coding through the DataCamp online platform. I've made a big deal about what these projects, how important they are to the learning outcomes and curriculum of the fellowship, and here's one as an example on what you might expect as a sample. The project lists will go up at some point during the recruitment cycle. I can't tell you exactly when that will be because it's a little dependent on when supervisors are able to provide their summaries on a per region basis, but they will come out at some point for your selection. If not before interviews, then definitely at the process of matching to projects. This project happened at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital for Cohort 2. You can look up on our Cohort 2 page on our fellowship website all the posters of the projects that our fellows did. Essentially, the summary of the clinical problem is that radiotherapy needs accurate contouring of the healthy tissue to make sure that the tumor is getting the maximal dose of radiotherapy, whilst the healthy tissue is receiving a minimal dose of radiotherapy. Manual contouring is a slow and laborious process. And if we take a look at the bottom right picture there, the outcomes of this project were to put an AI tool into the contouring process for radiotherapy, which reduced the time spent contouring in prostates from around 29 minutes to 14 minutes, and from the cervix and nodes from 50 minutes to 10 minutes, so 5-fold reduction in time. We're really looking for projects and want to place you on projects that have real-world clinical impact on patient workflows, just like this one. Now, I can't promise that you're all going to get projects exactly like this one, and we cover many different AI modalities and specialty areas. You may not end up in exactly your specialty background because AI is still a developing specialty within medicine, and the skills that you're going to acquire in this fellowship are generic in terms of how to deal with regulation, governance, data, and digital transformation in general. And here's just some nice photos from our previous workshops, show and tell, and graduation ceremonies. As you can see in the middle top picture there, we've had the pleasure to host Eric Topol himself on some of our remote workshops. Bottom left is last year's workshop by Professor Chris Russell at the Oxford Internet Institute. And on the right there, bottom right, is to illustrate that the fellows, faculty, supervisors, and alumni all form part of a forward-thinking and even innovative network and community of interest within the NHS who will support each other going forward. And we'd love you to join that community. With that, I'll hand over to Beatrix, who will tell you a bit more about the programme and how to apply.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, hopefully in that first part of the presentation, we've convinced you that this is a program to apply for, and then now we're going to talk about how to go about applying. This slide is just to follow on from the modalities of how we teach this program. So we have our AI lifecycle and those different ways that we're attaching that, but we also have an AI curriculum, which Alex mentioned is constantly being developed and improved to match the growing space of AI. What I wanted to show on this slide is this second half, where we ask fellows how they feel they achieve confidence in these themes, because I think that's a key part of being on this program. And while the AI projects and the asynchronous learning and the workshops are all really important parts, extra sort of add-on benefit is the networks that you'll develop with this program. And this is just a slide to show the full schedule of activities. We're talking about all these different things and how they could sort of align up across your 12-month program. What our fellows go on to do is quite an important question. Why apply? So a lot of fellows do go on to do other academic sort of pursuits. This is not an academic program, but it does happen. Some fellows go and work in industry, but the majority of our fellows stay in the NHS ecosystem and continue to work on AI projects, predominantly part-time on AI and part-time in clinical work. And we see this as really the gold standard of what might happen after your fellowship program. Some other things are what those roles will actually be called, and this is something that is constantly developing as well. As I'm sure if you're interested in AI, then you probably research different roles that you can pursue. So some roles are established, some are coming, but it's just a sort of a word cloud to illustrate what our fellows aim to be doing and what they feel confident to be doing once they finish the program. So cohort 4 timings, now we get to the details. So our applications are open, as you all know, and we're having our webinar today. Applications close towards the middle of December, and we shortlist over Christmas into the new year. We'll let you know as soon as possible, but the outcomes are scheduled for about the 15th of January. The interviews are the following week. And the interviews are grouped together by region. So that's why there's this period of time. We'll try and let you know as soon as possible those sorts of blocks and slots, but try and keep that period of about a week, I think it is, free in your diaries. And then in February, we'll let you know the outcome, and then we do all of the prep between February and August when you start.
And just to say, for anyone watching who is starting to have questions on the application process, please use the Q&A feature in this webinar. The chat is disabled, but the Q&A is live. Thanks.
Thanks, Max. So there are a couple of different eligibility criteria. The first one is about your registration and your career stage. And these are determined basically around what regulatory body you sort of prescribe to or your workforce prescribes to. And we ask you this in the application questions. So you can list, as you can see, there's lots of councils that are included this year. If you feel like yours sits slightly outside of these, we're happy to take messages and calls, emails about it. But these are the ones that have signed up so far. And in terms of dentistry, so if you are part of the medicine or part of career stage, if you're part of the medicine or dentistry workforce groups, you should be sort of on a specialty training program between ST3 and above before you've CCT'd. Sorry for all of those acronyms. Let me know if you need anything worded out there. And in the other workforce groups, so AHPs, nurses, midwives, pharmacists, optometrists, your banding is used to assess this, so from a 7 to an 8B.
And just to clarify, the ST3 and above requirement is a specific requirement for the East of England region. The other regions can be ST anything.
This criterion 3 is about the sort of geography and your banding on X and Y axes. So you can see here, this will be on the website as well. You can find your workforce group at the top, then work down to find your region. Your region is whether in sort of medicine, it would be the deanery that would have looked after you, which you can find in your national training number, the prefix of it. Or if you are in the other workforce groups, it's dependent on your employing trust, which region that employing trust lands in. And we have links on the website and the application to check that. And then on the far right just shows how many posts are available in that region for your workforce group, this cohort. I just flagged that for Wales, that's still to be confirmed. So if you're interested, you can apply. We just don't have posts at the moment confirmed. And international and non-NHS applicants, you have a specific form that you can fill out, which is on the website as well. And we do ask you to email us as well. The other part of the criteria is something we call approval in principle, and this is really important. So as well as submitting your application, you need to have someone in your organization, and depending on your workforce group, that might change what role that is, that submits a form as well, acknowledging that they support your application and they support that if you get onto the program, you'll be released to be able to do this work. As Alex said at the very top of the webinar, the fellowship's core aspect is this project that you do 2 days a week. So you need that time protected, and we're happy to have those conversations if you need support on that. So the approvals in principle forms are needed to be submitted at the same time of your application. And unfortunately, you will not be able to be shortlisted or interviewed without them. Let us know, of course, if you're having any issues with that, email us and we can try and help. So then more about the actual people that we're looking for. So we have a role description that's quite detailed. Again, you can get it on the website, but we just wanted to draw your attention to this person specification. We've talked a lot about digital healthcare leaders and AI and lots of sort of technical terms. But realistically, what we're really looking for is motivated, enthusiastic, go-getter individuals. Okay, so you don't need to come to the program with all of this knowledge. That's our role, to teach you in the program. So I would really encourage you to look at the person specification. There are some desirable technical skills, and I encourage you to sort of float them in your application, but they're not essential. This year, like in Cohort 3, we do have some sponsored places that aren't based on the NHS regions. This is from the British Society for Haematology. And in Cohort 4, there will be 2 places with this sponsorship model. These fellows have to be members of British Society for Haematology, and you will be matched with haematology projects. The regional eligibility criteria doesn't apply. But we do say it makes sense for you to preference projects that you feel like you can commute to. So if you live in the south of England, a north of England project might be a bit difficult to do. And then also that just to flag that the British Society of Haematology applicants are also entered into the regional pools. So if you are from Kent, Surrey, Sussex, you'll be in that pool for recruitment and in the British Society for Haematology recruitment pool. So 2 bites of the apple, that one.
Yeah. Although your first go at matching will go through the BSH pool, and your second go at the matching, if you haven't made it through the BSH pool, will be with the regional pool.
International and non-NHS applicants. So this is the first cohort that we have opened applications up to these people. The professional registration criteria is similar to that of the NHS. You need to be registered with a professional body, but not with a UK body. It can be from your home country. You need a sponsor, so you need financial backing, and we need that to be sort of approved and have evidence of it when you're applying. And those sponsorship fees are about the salary, your salary while you're here working, and any fees associated with running the fellowship program. And there's also an approval in principle form for you as well. Yes.
The bottom line on international applicants is contact us directly as well, because there will be bespoke arrangements that we'll be making with you and your sponsor, as well as the opportunity to participate in a dual fellowship with a clinical role as part of an international clinical fellow role, as well as an international AI fellow role. So something like half and half on a placement terms over those 12 months. But contact us directly. International fellows will need bespoke arrangements, so contact us early and directly.
Yeah. This is a slide to acknowledge all of the people that are involved in helping us develop this program and deliver it. On the left is all of the sponsors and the supporters of the program, and all of our educational content is co-developed with industry and experts. I think that might be the end of the slide. So this QR code takes you to our website. And I believe there's some Q&A questions coming in through.
Yes, I'll stop sharing now, and it's time for the Q&A. So we'll just try to work through systematically as much as possible here.
So,
I will start at the earliest one that I can see that's published, which is the time commitment variable? Can it be 0.2 whole-time equivalent, i.e. 1 day a week? The answer is definitely not, cannot be lower than 0.4. The entire program is designed around competencies gained on a 2-day-a-week program for a year. So your learning outcomes would not be achieved for an 0.2 whole-time equivalent, and therefore you will not be able to join the program if you're unable to commit to the full time. Okay. Next one is, if there's planned leave during the interview period, is there scope for interview dates outside the interview period? In general, no. People have dialed in from their leave for the 20, 25 minutes for the interview in the past. So unfortunately, those dates are fixed because the panels have to be convened with a very specific regional makeup for each region, and we can't simply call them to heal upon a new date. So those are set in stone, but there may be a little bit of wriggle room on the day if you let us know very far in advance. Next question says, will the eligibility criteria change for a future cohort? My region does not support me as a pharmacist in applying, but I have colleagues from the same trust that is currently a fellow. Eligibility has changed in between cohorts. In fact, in cohort 1, only medics were eligible, and the faculty has been a huge and staunch advocate for multi-professional workforce groups joining this program. In fact, if it hadn't been for our lobbying over many cohorts, that eligibility diagram, that matrix that you'd have seen, would have just been medics. That is the default opinion of many regional sponsors. So we've fought hard to expand multi-professional recruitment. We're sorry that we're not there at an ideal situation where everyone who can benefit from the program is eligible yet. My only advice would be, if you're not eligible this cohort, if you can send us an email and say who you are, where you are, and why you wanted to apply. And then an even bigger bonus would be if you're connected to any regional decision makers or budget holders with relation to your workforce group that could be involved in the conversation for next year. This is how we know where the demand is and where to spend our energy on trying to improve eligibility in future years. So the eligibility is on the diagram is how it's going to be for this cohort, barring any changes for Wales, which is obviously a TBC, but it may change in future cohorts, yes. This next one says, I'm currently applying for a training program, so I don't hold a national training number, but hope to by August. Would this make me ineligible? I'm going to address this at anyone who doesn't hold a national training number at the point of application, and the answer is unfortunately no, because you don't have a training program director who can authorize you to take less than full-time training, and therefore we don't have anyone to show that you are approved in principle for the time in which you'd be taking the fellowship, and so we can't progress you to shortlisting without an approval in principle, and so that would be an illegible application, I'm afraid. So a national training number in hand is an essential requirement for medics and dentists. E, maybe you could take this one. Is there an expectation of any coding knowledge, and what coding languages are most commonly used?
So the expectation is no, you do not need to know coding. Obviously, if you have some experience with it or sort of peripheral experience with it, it helps because you can have those conversations. But the purpose of our program is not to produce people that are going to build AI and coding, although it's nice to have. What coding languages are most commonly used? It's really dependent on the team. In GCT, the team uses Python. It was unclear on the website if psychologists could apply, as we were not listed under the AHP roles. Do you know this one, Alex?
That's correct. Psychologists are not allied health professions under the NHS England or NHS Scotland definitions, so would not be eligible in this group. Again, this is a workforce question that perhaps future cohorts might change, but not for this cohort, I'm afraid.
The next question is this expected to extend our training? I'm currently ST3. Yes, this does extend your training. So in that time that I said between February and August, when we get you ready to onboard onto the program, you will need to apply for less than full-time training approval from your regions. And I believe it extends your training by about 3 months, depending on what rate you are currently doing your program at.
Yeah, something to discuss with your TPD, but things that would count towards training, i.e. not extend your training, would tend to be highly aligned with your native curriculum. Clinical AI is essentially too new and not integrated. It hasn't trickled down into a lot of native curricula for your specialty training yet, so is highly unlikely to count towards your competencies and therefore count towards your CCT or reducing the time spent in training. The next question is about banding. It says, why are only band 7s and up allowed to apply? What if you're band 6? And so band 7, band 8A and band 8B are the eligible workforce groups from non-doctor, non-dentist applicants. The reason is that this has been agreed with NHS England's chief information officers for nursing and midwifery, for pharmacy, for AHPs, and with the national lead for eye care. The reason is before band 7, a applicant or fellow is unlikely to be in a position to be senior enough to influence policy or deployment of AI. So we want to target the fellowship at members of the workforce who are most likely to be able to translate the benefits and their learnings from the fellowship into real practice within a reasonable time frame. A cutoff have to be somewhere, and the consensus cutoff is band 7.
The next 2 questions are about a specialty training program, so it might be good for you to take, Alex.
Yep. Specialties have 3 years of core training and they move on to specialty training. Is core CT3 equivalent to ST3? And it's not. So specialty training, by specialty training, and it's in the application form, we mean specialty training in a program that leads to a certificate of completion of training, CCT, in its own right, not a training program that then leads to another training program, which then leads to CCT. So core training programs do not lead to CCT in their own right, so I'm afraid they're not eligible. The next question about training is, I will CCT before or during the fellowship. Would I be able to apply in a post-CCT role? And unfortunately, the answer is no. And that's due to the funding structure of the deaneries being responsible for training and education in their trainees primarily.
The next one is asking if AHP applicants, within AHP applicants, do we try and ensure a fair representation from different professions? I assume that means, do we reserve places for certain professional groups? At this stage, no, we don't. We do have some regions that reserve places for AHPs, but not sort of granular within that workforce group. Certainly something, email us and let us know what you're thinking.
Yep.
Self-employed dental associates registered under GDC cannot apply.
You must have an NHS employer to be to apply for this under the NHS and be funded for your salary under the NHS. Otherwise, anyone else would have to come through the non-NHS or international route. So in order to be funded by the NHS for the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI, you must have an NHS employer.
Next one, the application portal states 600 characters per question. Is this strict limit, as it only equates to 1 paragraph per answer? Yes, that is a strict limit. If you've tried to apply on the application form, it won't let you add any more characters. We understand that it's a paragraph per answer. We think that that's enough space and time to respond adequately to the questions we're asking, and we give you multiple options to respond as well. The next one is I'm an ED locum consultant. Lots of acronyms I don't recognize. FRCEM.
The short answer to that is unfortunately not eligible due to not holding a national training number and a specialty training program leading to CCT for the duration of the fellowship.
Okay.
How are fellows matched to projects?
That's a good one.
Is travel time considered and is remote working possible? B, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the way that we do it is we give all of the applicants a list of projects that are available in their region. And so specifically, if you're a British Society for Haematology applicant, you would get all the ones in your region and all the BSH ones. And then during the recruitment cycle, you get a form and you rank those projects by preference. So if travel time is important to you, then rank the projects that are closer to you first. And then the way that is actually matched up is based on interview performance. So highest ranking interview E will get first preference of their project. And then if that project is already taken, then you get your second preference. In previous years, most fellows have gotten their first or second preference. And regarding the remote working, it is possible. It's totally dependent on the team. And it's also something that, while if it's absolutely necessary, that's okay, we kind of discourage, just because if you get the most out of the fellowship, if you're physically there with the team, you can work side by side with them and help them with the deployment in that sense. But it is possible. I'm on 80% less than full-time training. Does that necessitate me going into 60% to be free for 2 days a week as required for the program?
Yes, you need to have at least 2 days a week free for the program. That is specifically stated on your approval in principle form. If your approver is not able to release you for that time, then unfortunately you cannot accept an application because you won't be able to fulfill the learning requirements of our curriculum.
I think we have had some fellows go up to 100% to bring it back down as well, but that's up to your employer as well.
Yeah, if you're applying for a registrar position and are unclear where you'll be located and not sure of your TPD, can you still apply? In that situation, you don't have a national training number yet, and unfortunately that would make the application not eligible. A very specific question. I was accepted onto a recent intake for the Topol Digital Fellowship. to April 2025. Could this potentially affect my eligibility for this fellowship? Not in itself disqualifying. However, if you have taken less than full-time training for that and are intending to take less than full-time and need to take less than full-time training for this fellowship as well, that's something that seriously needs to be discussed with your approver, because that may be a significant chunk of time that you're not spending on your training or employment, and therefore may cause serious issues. So discuss that thoroughly and make sure your approver understands what they would be signing you up for if you were successful. I would recommend. I am doing IMT. IMT is unfortunately not a specialty training program. It is what was previously called core medical training. So regretfully, that's not an eligible workforce group. The next question is about international students. I'm asking about the fee. Please, can you send us an email directly, and we should put up the email was on the last slide and it's on our website, but just for the avoidance of doubt, it's gst.aifellowship@nhs.net. We will send those details to you directly. You say, is it possible to find a sponsor within the UK? The faculty will not be finding sponsors for international students just because of the high volume of expected cases. We would expect you to come with a sponsor identified and ready to go. That's the pathway for internationals.
But if it was from within the UK, that would be acceptable. It's just you have to come with funding. How much percentage less than full time do we need to go in our current training in general to accommodate the program? As long as you have that 2 days a week free, and it doesn't mean that taking on the program pushes you over one full-time equivalent role, and whatever percentage works for you and your organization is absolutely fine. If you have a specific question, you can email us and let us know, and I can answer you specifically. My region cannot give approval in principle for less than full-time training, only approval. Do I therefore need to get everything sorted for less than full-time training before December 18th?
Email us directly with that. We have not encountered previously someone not being able to give approval in principle. It's a common theme and a requirement in many fellowship programs. So it just shouldn't be the first time they've experienced it. Email us directly and we'll sort it out.
Yeah. Do I have to go less than full-time, or can I do it with a full-time training post without the on-call commitments?
You have to go less than full-time. It's
Yeah.
not appropriate to do this in the gaps between other work. You'll need to be in office hours on an AI team with highly motivated and professional multidisciplinary team and supervisors. You cannot do this at all in your spare time. Is the curriculum delivered online or is it an in-person training? The workshops will be delivered in a combination of online and in-person. Importantly, the in-person ones will be at the beginning, which is a residential boot camp in London, at the beginning of the fellowship, and then peppered in throughout at centres of excellence, where we want you to meet and get to know and network with the other AI teams who are delivering work that you will want to know about. So it's a combination, and you will need to travel for the in-person workshops.
There's a question about the format for interview. I assume that's asking like the structure of the interview. I think they're less than half an hour. As Alex mentioned, the panel of interviewers are someone at least from the faculty, someone probably from the sponsoring organization, and also a potential project supervisor who are all on the panel asking you questions. There is no sort of pre-test involved. It's just questions. Are any travel expenses reimbursed? So this one is kind of dependent on your region and on your organization. The way that we encourage you to go about it is first asking your employer what their travel expense policy is, and through that then you can discuss with your regional sponsors, but the faculty themselves don't support travel reimbursement.
The short answer most of the time is yes, there will be a organization or regional reimbursement for travel expenses for purposes of going to workshop activities with this. If we went to 60% on our training program, then did 40% AI fellowship, would our salary still be equivalent to 100% of our nodal base salary? Yes, you are reimbursed according to your base salary for the 2 days a week that you spend on the fellowship, or your employer is reimbursed more specifically.
Yeah, you should receive your normal pay, and then the arrangements happen between the fellowship and your employer. Does the role we are substantively employed in, for example, as an AHP, need to involve direct patient care and patient facing?
No.
I was
You can
going to
have
say
roles
no.
that are, as long as you're registered with the correct workforce and you're eligible in that region, you can be in non-direct patient-facing roles such as management roles, because we recognize that those have an important role to play in AI transformation in the NHS.
The next
Can you
one,
work for 4 months at full-time rather than 0.4 full-time for 12 months instead? That's a no. So the projects are structured such that development of the project happens over the year, not within a compressed period of time. It's not simply a matter of sprinting, but there will be milestones that have dependencies on other people that you simply can't make just go faster. So you would not get the full educational outcomes of the fellowship going at 4 months at full time. So if you cannot be, again, if the bottom line for all these full-time / part-time questions is if you cannot be released for 2 days a week to work on this fellowship by approval in principle, then unfortunately your application wouldn't be eligible. This next one says, BSH membership is required only for haematology posts or all applicants? The BSH membership is relating only to the BSH Fellows in Clinical AI, which is a separate sub-program within the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI. Everyone else is funded by the NHS regionally. I think there's some more questions in review. So if your question hasn't been asked yet, we're going to still go to the next one. I'm going to publish a few, B, if you're happy to take these.
Just loading them on our side. Can you apply whilst on maternity leave? I'm returning to post in October, but the scheme starts in August. I think so. In previous years, we have been quite strict about an August start, but I would consider this an ad hoc consideration. So if you don't mind, if you can email me and we can discuss offline specifically, sort of dependent on how your employer sees you in those months. Is there a way to see what projects are currently underway in our training region? So I believe that on the fellowship website, if you navigate to cohort 3 under the fellows, they have their projects, don't they, Alex?
Cohort 2 have all their completed projects up, as do cohort 1.
Okay, not cohort 3 though.
Cohort 3, when they graduate, we'll put them up, which will be next year.
Completely fine. Is it possible to speak to someone who's completed a cohort from our own trust? Is there a list or people we can talk to? Certainly, if you want to email us, let us know the organization that you work for and your workforce group, if that's important to you, and we can see if we can find a fellow that's happy to have a chat with you.
Otherwise, their contact details, often their LinkedIn details, are on the fellowship website from the previous cohort. So they're all happy to be approached directly. They've all been through the application process, so you can talk to them. Do you have any tips for the application and interview? All our tips are written in the FAQ section on the Cohort 4 application website. The main question that comes up is, how do I prepare for interview? And the answer that I give to that is that the interview is scored according to the person specification in the role description document. So think about how you meet the person specification of the role description document and work backwards from there, and that should prepare you well for the interview. It would be inappropriate for me to release the specific questions that we ask at interview, because I'm sure you can understand that that's not fair.
I think the next question is something similar, and then it's ST5 ED registrar. Overflows into consultant job. Is this acceptable if remaining at 60%? You have to hold your national training number for the entirety of the program. So if that was to change between August 25 and August 26, then you would then be ineligible. What would happen if a fellow needed to go on maternity leave partway through the fellowship? Again, we manage these as an ad hoc. We cannot, basically our line is that the offer is a time-bound opportunity. So it's not automatic that we can necessarily defer or extend your projects, but in certain situations we have been able to do that, and it's kind of dependent on where the project is, what stage it's at, when you go on to any sort of leave, not just maternity leave. But we do our absolute best to accommodate this, because we don't want that to be a barrier for joining the program.
Yeah. However, that we cannot guarantee anything will happen, and the default status of someone who needs to go on long-term leave for any reason is that simply the time is lost, and there's no automatic way to get it back.
How frequently do the workshops run? They are monthly. At the moment, they're about every third Monday where we can adapt that. So yeah, once a month, one of your fellowship days is used for the workshops outside of the masterclass at the very start, the boot camp, which is 3 days.
Is there a list of topics that could be covered at interview? Yes, it's the things that are in the person specification in the role description document. Can pharmacists working outside a hospital apply? Yes, anyone who has an NHS employer can apply for the NHS funding, as long as your workforce and regional eligibility are also met. I'm a GP ST3. If my TPDs help me go to 60% and then I don't get this fellowship, what will happen? So this is an approval in principle, not a securing a less than full-time training attachment. You are approved in principle, and then you formally apply for your less than full-time training once you receive the post. So in answer to your question, nothing will happen. You'll just continue your training as usual if the post is not awarded. Okay, more questions to review?
Yeah, I can't see any yet.
I'm going to publish a whole list here.
Is there a specific period of time you must stay in the trust post-fellowship before you may need to reimburse fees? This is not something we've come across. I would say no. The funding doesn't come from the trust, so you're not sort of bound to the trust. The funding comes from the region itself. Is it possible to join during your PhD years? Again, yes. We have had some fellows do this. Obviously, if you meet all the other eligibility criteria, then that's fine. Just remember that you can't be having multiple responsibilities that amount to more than a full-time position. I am in between interdeanery transfer. Both organizations have the fellowship. Can my current TPD fill in the application application in principle form. And if I get
Contact us
accepted,
directly.
yeah.
Contact us directly. That needs a bespoke arrangement.
And what is the difference between this fellowship and the Topple Digital Fellowship?
The Topple Digital Fellowship does not assign you to vetted projects. You come with your own project that you wish to pursue during that year. And the Topple Digital Fellowship has a different focus on its workshops, which are generically attuned to digital transformation, whereas we are highly specifically focused on AI transformation in healthcare. Additionally, the Topol Digital Fellowship gives your employer a lump sum of money, which can be spent on multiple things. Mostly people buy out time, for instance, a day a week, or maybe use it for equipment or administrative costs. We buy out 2 days of your week, and that goes to your employer, that you don't have a choice on how to spend the funding allocated for salary. Those are the main substantial differences between us and the Topol Digital Fellowship.
Okay. Probably this is where can we see the projects and when will they be published? We'll share them with any applicants during the recruitment cycle. We try and do it as soon as possible, but as Alex said, it's sort of dependent on some other factors that we don't have control over. Who has been a successful candidate so far? Do you realistically need previous experience in coding? I feel like we've answered that. You don't need previous experience in coding, and a successful candidate is someone that meets that person's specification. There's someone, I will finish my GP July to August 25. I think that we've answered that as well. That's someone that would then no longer have a national training number in August. So you would not be eligible. As an optometrist, I see NHS patients, but I do not have a band as I'm either paid by opticians or via my limited company in hospital. Can I apply? I think potentially you might need to email us with the specifics of that one, unless you know straight away, Alex.
You would need to have an NHS employer to be eligible,
yeah.
But if there's any doubt, to send us your employment details and I can make an assessment for you specifically.
Do you publish a regional lead so that we can get in touch and see what the likely regional projects might be, particularly for the BSH process?
If you have specific questions about the BSH project lists, contact us directly, because I'm not in a position to publish a full list yet for logistical reasons. If my trust approved my application for less than full time, is my salary going down during the program? Note, you'll be recompensed your unbanded salary rate for 2 days a week for the 2 days that you don't spend in training.
The difference would be that we don't pay your typical on-calls or overnights, so that might slightly change your pay that is coming into your account, but it shouldn't reduce you by the 2 days a week.
How does the 2-day-a-week program work with clinical rota such as night shifts and weekends? For instance, if we had 4 night shifts in 1 week, would there be no AI fellowship days for that week? That needs to be discussed with your training program director and rota coordinators well in advance of taking up the post. And you will need to make it work. The projects are not the sort of thing that you can spend loads of time on 1 week and none on the next. It's normally suitable to keep them ticking along throughout the year and have regular team meetings and check-ins and stand-ups and be responsive. So going a long time AWOL clinically is normally not suitable. So if you anticipate your rota being an issue, do contact us early as well. We can discuss with your TPT what arrangements can be made.
Next
What's the
question.
fee structure for an international candidate? Are there any scholarships that support this program? We don't have any scholarships to support this program, but we expect you, if as an international candidate, to have identified a sponsor who is willing to pay the fees. And to find out more about the fees, please contact us directly. I'm enrolled in a training program that I rotate in October rather than August. I may not be able to switch to less than full-time between August to October. and a comment on that saying similar situation. That's about a quarter of the program, so August, September, or October. It would not be appropriate to have such a delayed starting date. In practice, you would then need approval in principle from anyone involved in the so TBD before and after the training program rotation to make sure you're able to take up the post for the full duration of the fellowship there. Can physician associates apply? Unfortunately not. They're not yet a as of this cohort, regulated workforce group in the same way as the other clinical groups. So perhaps in a future cohort.
I was just writing a comment. I'm due to CCT prior to August 2026. So you need to have a national training number the whole of the program. Although I would say if you're going less than full time in August 2025, your training program may extend. So you might CCT post August 2026. Can locally employed and SAS doctors apply if they provide approval in principle from the clinical and medical director of the trust? I think that's
the short
question.
answer is no.
Yeah.
If you don't have a national training number.
Same with the next one, due to CCT in mid-Jan 2025, that would make you ineligible. How much will we know about the specific project prior to accepting the post? So you're sent the project form that we receive as well that has all of the details about where it is, who the supervisor is, what are some other members of the team, what the project is, if there are other projects going on in that team, what your specific expectations, roles, responsibilities will be on the project. So all of that information will be given to you before you even preference them.
Yeah. Okay. We've reached 1 o'clock, so I'm sorry that we haven't been able to answer everyone's questions today. Please email, and we'll put it in the share the screen again.
I'll also
Please
have
email
a
us
look
directly
through the Q&A and any questions that I think are sort of new or something that we haven't addressed. I'll try and comment on them now.
If your question hasn't been answered, I would suggest that 95% of questions that we have answered today are directly addressed in the FAQ section on the Cohort 4 application page for this cycle of the NHS Fellowship in Clinical AI. So I would suggest that would be your first port of call. If you still can't find the answer to your question there, then please do email us directly. Thanks very much for attending this webinar. Good luck in your applications and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye, guys.